Hi, I'm Shivan Sarna, and what a pleasure to have you here today. I am the founder of Chronic Condition Rescue. Uh, Basically, what was wrong with me? I had lymph issues. My mother died of lymphoma. I had, uh, dental issues, and I wanted to learn more about biological dentistry. It changed my life. I had liver gallbladder issues, and I had SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And I found that most of the conversations addressing these issues were not happening in doctors' offices. I am pro practitioner, I am pro doctor. However, I believe in patient advocacy that we need to do ourselves. And my platform, SIBO SOS, is truly, a living testament to that. SOS came to mean save ourselves in conjunction with these phenomenal healers out in the world and researchers and providers. So I've been doing these webinars to help connect you directly to these types of specialists and people who are in the trenches learning in their clinics as well as doing research. And today is no different. We have our very special guest, Alicia Galvin, and she is a dietitian, registered dietitian. She's also very skilled in SIBO and a variety of different gut issues. She is also one of the educators for Microbiome Labs and has a phenomenal presentation, chock full of research and studies. And if you stay, we're going to announce something special. Actually, I'm going to do it now. If anybody decides to purchase today anything from Microbiome Labs in the next, it's 3 p.m. Eastern, by 5 p.m. Eastern time, and you email us at info@SIBOSOS, we will get you her slides. This is a last minute breaking news thing, so it might not happen instantly. It might be tomorrow, but that's what's happening today, right now. And so with that, I'm going to hand things over to you and let you do your thing. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I really enjoy speaking to this audience. I find you all very engaging. You always ask really great questions, and we're very excited today to talk about spore-based probiotics, which some of you may be familiar with. For some of you, this might be a newer topic, but we'll go through the science and the background of how these spores differ from your traditional probiotics and when and why you would want to potentially use it. So I'm going to get my
And
presentation.
ultimately, that builds a resilient microbiome, thus the title. Okay.
Right, exactly. So let's do slideshow. All right. So let's start out with first just talking about what is the difference between a healthy gut versus an unhealthy gut or a leaky gut, as we have all probably been familiar with that particular term. So a healthy gut, we generally have really good microbial diversity. So that means we have a lot of different types of species in our microbiome. We have the right types of species that should be there. So we have good diversity. So think of it like a rainforest where we have lots of different types of plants. The more robust, the more diverse your microbiome, the stronger the ecosystem. Same thing in a rainforest. And the more different types of plants you have in there, the stronger the ecosystem. So generally, if we have a really good diversity, that leads to low levels of pathogens. So lower levels of these opportunistic or pathogenic microbes that can come out and wreak havoc. We also have a strong mucosal barrier system, which is this nice sort of blue mucousy layer that separates everything that's happening here in our lumen, which is the innermost part of the digestive tract, from the intestinal epithelium, which is that single cell layer that separates basically everything going on in the lumen with our immune system. So we have a really nice, strong mucosal barrier. I like to kind of think of this as the middle seat. If you have young children, and if you've ever been on a long road trip and you have two kids in the back seat of a car, you want to make sure you have an empty middle seat that separates them. Because if anyone encroaches on the other space, there could be issues. So think of it as kind of that middle seat that separates the two so that there's not havoc that starts to ensue. We generally have low inflammation and good tight junction. So that's a healthy gut. That's what we want to have. Now, if we have dysbiosis, so if we don't have good diversity, if we have low diversity and the types of microbes that shouldn't be there, if we have low keystone strains, so keystone strains would include Akkermansia municiphilia, Faecalibacterium presnitzii, Bifidolongum. These keystones are kind of like your Instagram influencers. So they make up a relatively small percentage of your microbiome, but they play a disproportionately large role in managing the microbiome and keeping the microbiome in balance. So they have particular roles to play that are very important. So for example, Akkermansia helps to maintain this mucus barrier, that middle seat, so to speak. So if we don't have good Akkermansia levels, we're not maintaining that mucus barrier very well. So low diversity, again, not having enough of these keystones or not having the right types of microbes. If we have low short chain fatty acid production, so low butyrate, propionate and acetate, if we have a disrupted mucus barrier, and if we have a disrupted immune response, and if we have a dysfunctional gut barrier with these tight junctions that are compromised, then that's what's going to lead to too many of these LPSs, which we'll talk about what those are here in a second, as well as other toxins, getting through the lumen, from the lumen where the microbes are, through that intestinal lining and into where the immune system is. So this is just an image of kind of what I just showed you in the cartoon, but here in the lumen, this is where we have all these different types of species. So all the blue, all the reds and pinks and yellows that you see, those are all of our commensal bacteria. This green barrier is that mucus or that muc2 layer that lines our colon and to a degree our small intestine. And then our epithelium, which is our single cell layer. So this is an image of what that actually looks like. And so you can see how the bacteria are kept nice and away from our epithelium so that we're not activating the immune system. So this is what we want when we're talking about a resilient microbiome or resilient gut, is when we have all of these anatomy and physiology pieces in place. So these are some dysbiosis risk factors, or the exposome. So these are an exposome is essentially all the things that we can be exposed to that can influence our microbiome. So throughout our lives, depending on what we're exposed to in the environment, those can play a role in how resilient our microbiome is. So that could be anything from medications and natural antimicrobials, certain infections, excessive consumption of alcohol, smoking, stress, chronic stress, frequent travel, lots of saturated fats, or the standard American diet, which is filled with many emulsifiers and food chemicals and preservatives, environmental toxins like glyphosate or heavy metals, and lack of sleep. So these are all going to be things, and intense exercise. So over exercise or, really heavy training can negatively impact our microbiome. So again, here's our picture of these different LPSs, which are these, essentially they're components of the cell membrane of certain types of bacteria, particularly gram-negative bacteria. And when gram-negative bacteria go through their life cycle, or whenever we eat a meal and those bacteria start to die off, they release these LPSs from that cell membrane. And those LPSs are they activate the immune system very strongly. So as long as they're contained in the lumen up here, it's not too big of a deal. The problem is if they are activated and released and they're able to translocate and make it through this intestinal barrier and activate the immune system. So we're going to walk through with a few of those steps here in a second. So an LPS, or a lipopolysaccharide, is an endotoxin. As I mentioned, it's part of that outer membrane of these gram-negative bacteria. And there's a particular part called the lipid A, which is just a portion of this LPS that is most responsible for that toxicity. If any of you do stool testing, whether it be BioMFX or another type of stool test, if you're seeing that somebody has a very large quantity of proteobacteria as part of their phylum, that is the group that has the largest number of LPS containing species. So if someone has a lot of these proteobacteria, then that's going to increase their likelihood that they'll have more of these LPSs being released and potentially have a greater endotoxemic activity. It's normal to have some at some health, at some level. We just don't want it getting through the immune system or through the gut barrier to the immune system, because that's when it can really underlie many different chronic health conditions. And that is essentially what metabolic endotoxemia is. It's this immune response. It's this low-grade persistent inflammation that's coming from this LPS particular component from bacteria. It's estimated to affect about 33% of the westernized population, although I would say that number is probably a little bit bigger. This is just what we know of, but it's probably a larger percentage. And it's just basically when we have these LPSs or these endotoxins getting into circulation, and usually they peak in their levels about 5 hours after you've eaten a meal. Meals that are higher in fat and denser in calories have the biggest impact on bringing those LPSs through the gut barrier and into circulation. So a higher fat, especially higher saturated fat diet, is going to more significantly impact that condition. And then these inflammation, it's marked by measures of inflammation like interleukin-6, interleukin-1 alpha, higher triglycerides, and also postprandial insulin levels. So this is what can lead to insulin resistance. So the first step that has to happen with metabolic endotoxemia is that you have these LPSs breaching into this lamina propria space, which that's just the area right underneath this intestinal epithelium. So that single cell layer that I was talking about, the lamina propria is that space just right underneath. So if you have breakages or compromised tight junctions, then these LPSs are getting through and into that space. Then what happens is these LPSs bind to something called LPS binding protein, or LPB. So think of LPB as a taxi that's just coming around looking for these LPSs, and LPS flags it down, and then that LPB comes and grabs it, gets it, and is able to then transport it to a certain receptor complex of our immune system. So essentially it's that taxi that's just taking that LPS, gets to an immune cell, and then it activates NF-kappa B. NF-kappa B is our master inflammation switch. So it's, if you think about, your house and you have a master switch that controls all the electricity in the house, NF-kappa B would be that master switch, and it's going to flip on the inflammation. And so that's going to initiate these pro-inflammatory cytokines, and it's that perpetuation of these pro-inflammatory cytokines that then leads to chronic diseases. And so it's that chronic low-grade inflammation that will then underlie things like diabetes and mood disorders, various types of chronic illnesses. So here's a few different articles. We're not going to go through all of them, but I just wanted to show you just how many different conditions have a root cause in metabolic endotoxemia. So we have obesity and insulin resistance, diabetes. These are things like depression, so mood disorders. Alzheimer's disease has even been linked back to an increase in LPSs in circulation because it can flip on the inflammation in the brain and lead to plaque buildup. Female reproductive, so fertility challenges have been linked both in men and women. Autoimmune, and then also the dorsal vagal complex, which has to do with our motility. So it can actually, if these LPSs are getting to the brain and they're affecting this particular region of the brain, it can suppress our gastric motility. So what do we do about it? Well, this is from a few years ago, and essentially there's some diet and lifestyle modifications. So of course, minimizing some of those dysbiosis risk factors, like minimizing alcohol consumption, increasing macronutrients, especially things like polyphenols and fiber, reducing saturated fat, making sure that you're getting enough prebiotics, but also probiotics. So probiotics have shown to reduce levels of circulating endotoxins, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. So first of all, what is a probiotic? We hear this term thrown around a lot. People talk all the time about improving their gut health and just taking a probiotic. Essentially, it's a live microorganism that when we consume it in adequate amounts, gives some sort of a health benefit to the host. Basically, it's something that's alive that we take that benefits us in some way. And so the other reason, or the other thing that has to be true to be considered a probiotic, is that it has to have some sort of scientific evidence for that health benefit. It has to be documented. So just in summary, it's alive, there has to be health benefits, and there has to be scientific evidence. So probiotics are live microorganisms, and the most commonly used ones in different supplementation methods are going to be your lactobacillus and your bifido species. But we also want to make sure that probiotics are tolerant of room temperature, because if you think about, a lot of these probiotics that are refrigerated, if they're refrigerated, then what happens when you consume them and your body temperature is 98.7? That's not a refrigerated temperature. So how likely are those probiotics going to be able to survive the temperature? And then also too, we have various digestive checkpoints. So we have our stomach acid, we have bile flow, we have digestive enzymes, and these are basically designed to neutralize and to kill off microbes that we are ingesting from food or things that we're inhaling from the outside. We have all these digestive checkpoints to make sure that we're not just pouring in all these bacteria and organisms from the external environment into our system that maybe shouldn't be getting there or has the potential to overgrow. And that's one of the things with SIBO. These various risk factors that can lead to SIBO are if we have low stomach acid, or if we have poor bile flow, or if we have poor enzymatic output. So there are certain things that we have to factor in that will determine whether or not these probiotics, when you take them, that they actually make it to the site of action that they're supposed to then do all of these wonderful things for us, which is in our colon. So if they're not surviving that journey, then they may not be conferring those benefits. So most of these particular probiotics are actually what are called metabolic response modifiers. They're just tourists. So they provide transient effects that you're just going to get the benefit of when you're taking it, but you won't necessarily change anything in the microbiome. You're not going to be shifting gut ecology. You're not going to be doing anything necessarily for the intestinal barrier. You're really just targeting a symptom. So as you can see, these are a few examples of some commonly used probiotics. Not to say that these aren't beneficial. Some of these have very good research behind them, but again, they're mostly going to be just dealing with a particular symptom. So a single strain, single effect. They're not going to be shifting and changing the gut ecology to necessarily make the gut more resilient. And they may not work for everyone. So that leads us to a paradigm shift of not necessarily taking probiotics with the intent to just reseed the microbiome, but to actually change the microbiome and to shift the environment so that we're encouraging these natural keystones and beneficial commensals in its own endogenous environment versus trying to just throw a bunch of seeds out there and hope that they take. So this is where we come to spores and what the difference is between a spore-based probiotic versus a traditional probiotic. So again, if we're thinking about the definition of what a probiotic is, it's really to help the host, to confer some sort of health benefit. And we really, at the deepest level of root cause, to help and benefit the host is to work on the root cause of disease, not just the symptoms. And again, if we remember the conversation around endotoxins and intestinal hyperpermeability, which are linked to all these various conditions, ideally, we would want some sort of a probiotic that's really working on these endotoxins and the leaky gut at the same time, so that we're shifting the root cause of these conditions. We're not just dealing with the symptoms. So most of these probiotics are going to be really just focusing on the symptoms, not on the root cause. So you can think of spores as being the root, working on the root, whereas these other probiotics are going to be working on the branches or the symptoms of the condition. So what is a spore-based probiotic? Well, they've been around for a long time. They actually were used back starting in the 1950s back in Europe, and they can remain dormant for centuries. They have what's called a biphasic lifestyle. So they are dormant when they are under conditions that are not conducive for them to survive. And then they come alive and they germinate when they are in an environment that is like our intestines that allows them to survive and proliferate. So they can be dormant for a long time. I think the oldest known spore was like 250 million years old. So they can be around for a long, long time. And they're very stable. They do survive the digestive checkpoints, like I was mentioning earlier, that are intended to neutralize probiotics. These spores can actually survive stomach acidity and enzymes. They can survive more extreme heat. They also have been, since they've been around for so long, they have evolutionary significance. So we have co-evolved with spores for centuries, whereas things like lactobacilli have really just been around for a very small percentage of the human existence. We weren't fermenting yogurt back in the caveman days, but spores were around. And so we have co-evolved with these spores over time. They can survive with or without oxygen. They are naturally found in the human gut, especially the ones that we use in Megaspore. They are not soil-based, they are human-based origin, and they can colonize in the colon. And so these are a few of the benefits. So through the studies we've done with microbiome labs, the 13 or so studies that we've done on Megaspore, we know that the spore-based probiotics can increase richness and diversity of the microbiome, specifically can enhance lactobacillus and bifido. So even though you're not taking a lacto or bifido probiotic, you can actually see an increase in these particular strains and species through just taking a spore-based probiotic. We also know that they can outcrowd or essentially compete with other organisms that shouldn't necessarily be there. They can survive digestion. They're very stable. They have those endospore coatings that can withstand, as I mentioned, that extreme heat, cold, and pH. There's also, they can really help to balance that commensal to pathogenic organism. So again, if we think about the leaky gut picture and how we have dysbiosis in a leaky gut scenario, these can help to restore that balance. So we're having more of the good and less of the bad, and then they can colonize once they reach the colon. So in Megaspore, we have 5 different bacillus strains, very specific strains, and these have been studied not only together as a Megaspore, but they also have multiple studies on their own and some in combination with maybe 2 or 3 of them. So Bacillus subtilis A258 really helps with secreting up to, this says 12, but really it's up to 24 different antibiotic substances that really will target some of those more opportunistic microbes. We have Bacillus indicus HU36, which helps with carotenoid production and antioxidant levels. Bacillus clausii, which helps with the immune system. It's also very safe and resilient to antibiotics. And so it's a very good option if you're taking an antibiotic and you want to help to preserve your gut. Bacillus clausii is a really great option for that as well. Bacillus coagulans has also been studied in helping with supporting immune function, and then lichen formis, which can produce certain B vitamins and also will secrete certain antimicrobial substances. So some of you, if you've listened to Shivan or if you've listened to Microbiome Labs, you're familiar with this study. And for those of you who are not, we'll go through it real quickly. But this was done back in 2017, and it's one of our flagship studies because it was when one of the very first ones, or in fact, the first one using Megaspore in a human trial to look at how does taking Megaspore actually affect these endotoxin levels or LPS levels that I was mentioning, as well as other markers like triglycerides. And so this was a 30-day trial. It was 75 healthy men and women. These were college kids. So we know that they were not leading a very healthy lifestyle. They weren't, if we know college kids, they're not eating necessarily organic and all the time and meditating every day. And so they had a lot of dysbiosis risk factors, and they were instructed to consume a meal of, it was a thin crust cheese pizza. It was a fast food meal, so a very high fat, high saturated fat meal. So with the intent that it would bring those LPSs into circulation. And so they took baseline measurements of LPSs, and then the participants took either 30 days of the probiotic, or they did 30 days of a placebo. And so they had 2 groups that they were comparing. And in the groups that were on the spore-based treatment, they actually had a 45% reduction over that month's time, eating the same meal. So they tested them initially, and then they tested them after the month. And there was a 45% reduction in LPSs in their circulation, whereas in the placebo group, there was a 32% increase. So that made for a differential of over 77% difference between the 2 groups in their levels of circulating endotoxins. They then also looked at triglyceride levels. And so you can see at baseline, the Megaspore group actually had higher levels of triglycerides. But over time, you can see here with this line in the purple, the placebo group had a very minor decrease after the supplement group, or after the 30 days. So those that were taking the placebo, minor decrease, but the Megaspore group had a very significant decrease in their triglycerides, which is a measure of, insulin, LPS levels. So there were some improvements there in their triglycerides as well. So basically what this is showing is that we do have a benefit of a true probiotic that stays alive in the digestive system, is able to modulate the microbiome, and is able to mitigate leaky gut, because the only way that LPSs can get into circulation is through a leaky gut. So if we see a decrease in these LPSs, then we know that there's some healing of that intestinal barrier, a resurgence of that resilience, and allowing us to then protect the host. So these LPSs are not getting into the circulation, so they're not activating that immune system. This is another one that was looking at Megaspore in a SHINE model. So this was in a model of the human GI tract. And what this particular study showed was that giving Megaspore does increase propionate, which is a good short chain fatty acid. It decreases ammonia, which is not a very beneficial byproduct of metabolism of glutamine in the GI tract. And also we saw an increase in keystone species. So Akkermansia aminosyphilia, which if you remember is the keystone that helps to maintain that really nice thick mucus barrier. And also we saw bifido species increase and overall microbial diversity increased. So if you remember back to that leaky gut, healthy gut at the very beginning, when we saw what characterizes a healthy gut, we want to see good keystones. We want to see increased and robust microbial diversity. We want to see good short chain fatty acid production. And so we saw all of that in this particular model. So this is just a summary of the various Megaspore research that we have done over the years. So we know that it can decrease those endotoxins by 42%. It can improve microbial diversity and can maintain health promoting commensals. There's been a couple of studies done on triglycerides. One showed that it decreased triglyceride levels by about 24% in 90 days, and then another that showed it decreased almost 40% after 12 weeks. It can protect the liver from inflammation and damage. It can improve IBS symptom severity scores as effectively as antibiotics and a low FODMAP diet. It can be protective of GI function when taken with antibiotics, and these are all very stable and they can survive the GI tract with no need for any kind of refrigeration. Now, in terms of how to take it, we recommend that you start low and slow. So there are some dosing instructions on the label to start with 1 capsule every other day for the first week, then 1 capsule daily, and then by week 3, you go to the standard dose of 2 caps daily with a meal. Now, and ongoing, you can discuss that with your provider. There is a maintenance protocol, and a lot of that will just depend on the various digestive risk factors or dysbiosis risk factors that might be present for your particular condition. But we do recommend that you start low and slow with it just to avoid any sort of GI discomfort or potential die-off reaction. And with that, I will conclude my presentation so we can have a good Q&A discussion.
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's put some love into the chat because that was a beautiful presentation. Succinct, short, sweet, to the point. I love it. Now, I apparently spoke too soon and too quickly. Not too soon, but too quickly. Wasn't that a good presentation? That was really like, you are in your zone, woman. Okay. We have worked out through my long-term relationship and mad crush on Microbiome Labs that has been so gracious to us and my community, a 15% discount for you on anything that you purchase from Microbiome Labs. And the link is in, Anthony, can you put the link in the, well, I'll just do it because I got it right here. The link is going to come in to the chat right now. And it is usually only for practitioners to have you order from practitioners. But because of my relationship and the graciousness of Microbiome Labs through the years to us in our partnership, they are giving my community a special dispensation like the Pope. So you have to click the link, you use patient direct code SIBO SOS, and then for the 15% off, you use coupon code NOBLOAT15. Okay. That is one thing. If you, and I think it does work in Canada. If you have any questions, Crystal, Mohammed, put those in the Q&A box. So if you came in late, it's fine. All questions go in the Q&A box. Now, something else is if you want the slides for the next hour and a half, so 5 p.m. Eastern time, send us your proof of purchase that you've purchased between now and 5 p.m. Eastern time, and we will give you a link to the slides. I think it will be today, it might be tomorrow, but you will get a link to the slides if you purchase by 5 p.m. tonight. You must send proof of purchase. You cannot just email my team and say, hi, send me the slides. This is a little treat for people who take that like fast action. So that's what that is all about. Tomorrow, you can still get the No Bloat 15. Okay, so it's just the slides are for today between now and 5 p.m. Eastern. And so we look at the timestamp on your receipt, and that's how we know. Okay. So the website asks for a patient registration. Should we do that first? Yes, it is SIBO SOS. So you just keep scrolling up into the chat, you guys. Info at SIBOSOS.com. If you want to get the slides between now and 5 p.m. Eastern time, send us your proof of purchase. So some people have sent us like a little note saying, hey, can I have the slides? Send me your proof of purchase before 5 tonight. And then when you're on the microbiome lab site, it's SIBO SOS is the patient direct code. And then the coupon is no bloat 15. And that, if Barb, can you help, Anthony, can you help Barb? Your email is not being accepted when I try to register. What's the customer service address over at Microbiome Labs, Alicia?
Oh, I can get that for you.
Okay, Ruth, this is about people who are ordering directly at Microbiome Labs. Okay, we love you, Ruth, but that's the deal for today. I think it's support at, but I'm gonna,
Yeah, I
Anthony,
think
do you
it's
have that?
supported. Yeah, I
Okay.
think so, but I'll have to get that for you.
Okay, support. So if you're having problems ordering, now let's get to these questions. Okay, my husband seems to have gotten IBS or something else right now being tested for C. diff from taking an antibiotic for a skin infection. He'll likely have to go on an antibiotic again. What probiotic strains or companies should he take to combat what the antibiotics could do to his gut? So I think you covered this, but let's cover it again if you would, please.
Yeah, so you can use Megaspore for sure. I will also say that we have a product called Restore Flora that has the Saccharomyces boulardii in it, as well as some of the spores, and that is really geared specifically towards antibiotic use. So actually, my favorite little concoction that I use for antibiotics is 2 capsules of Megaspore, 2 capsules of Restore Flora, two capsules of HU58 during the course of the antibiotics, and then for 3 times whatever the antibiotic course was after. So it's a 10-day course of antibiotics. Take it for 30 days after, just to preserve the microbiome and then to help with that rebound, so that you can gain back some of those good guys. But you definitely, I would say Megaspore and then the Restore Flora.
Okay, can you open the probiotic? Can you open Megaspore? Yes.
Yep, you can
Yeah,
open it, mix it with food. It's completely fine.
it's totally fine. Carrie and a couple of people are asking that, so we're gonna say that I answered that live. It does not affect the potency. The link to orders in the chat, Bridget. And should Megaspore be taken if you have severe bloating? Anything to take for severe bloating? It's a loaded question because there's so many things that could cause bloating. But
Yeah.
what have you seen clinically from people who take Megaspore and bloating?
I've seen, again, yeah, that's a loaded question because it just depends on why they have it. And, that
Yeah.
would be root cause too. So figure out, is it SIBO? Is it a food intolerance if they have? You can do Megaspore. I would definitely start low and slow with it. But we did do an IBS study using Megaspore compared to rifaximin and a low FODMAP diet. And we did see that the improvements in symptoms were just as good in the Spore group as it was in the rifaximin FODMAP group. And they checked a bunch of different markers. They looked at symptom severity scores, they looked at rectal volume, sensation. So there can be some benefits potentially to doing Megaspore, especially if it's coming from some sort of dysbiosis in your gut.
So there are a lot of different ways to deal with SIBO, and that's just one reason why you might be bloated. You could be bloated from ovarian cysts. You can be bloated from so many things. So we're with you. Lynn is asking, what is HU58?
HU58 it's Bacillus subtilis HU58. It is one of the spores that's in Megaspore, but we also have a standalone product called HU58 that is just a higher dose of that particular spore. And because that particular spore secretes natural antimicrobials, we use that sort of as a more gentle cleanup mechanism. So if someone has, a lot of dysbiosis, or if they have some pathogens, we'll bring that in, or if they have food poisoning, or if they have, something along those lines, you can use that as a standalone. So that's what it is. It's one of the spores in Megaspore, just at a higher dose.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Can Crohn's disease be reversed, or is it a life sentence? Hi, Benita. Is there a specific diet that you would recommend for people suffering from Crohn's? I'm currently only taking Mezavant for Crohn's. That's a serious medical condition. So I'm so sorry you're dealing with that, Benita. But maybe you would like to comment on some general information.
Yeah, I mean, generally autoimmune conditions, you're not going to cure them. And it depends on how far along you are in the condition. So it's hard to say. I don't know where you are in that spectrum of Crohn's. I mean, I've had many clients where we've been able to really mitigate their symptoms and, help them get into remission through working on gut health. You're not going to ever cure it, but you can definitely help to facilitate a resilient microbiome, which in the research, having higher short chain fatty acids, having better diversity, lower mucosal inflammation, all these things can definitely support, having less symptoms of the Crohn's. But yeah, that's going to be a more individualized conversation. So
Okay, you answered that. Let's see. Darlene, I don't know how we can talk about the companies in the world modifying our soil microorganisms. I think we can pray for the planet. I'm not kidding. D is saying, I heard fertility, but could this cause PCOS? Thanks, D.
in terms of metabolic endotoxemia, yes, there's definitely some associations with LPSs and metabolic endotoxemia with PCOS. PCOS is also associated with lesser levels of things like acromantia and certain dysbiotic patterns. So yeah, definitely with the female, same with endometriosis. So any of the female reproductive conditions, there's a link to the microbiome.
Okay. The patient direct code that you're being asked for is SIBO SOS, no space. SIBO SOS. Best to finish Candida protocol of reducing yeast before introducing a spore probiotic, question mark.
I would say that's individualized. There would be nothing wrong with taking spores alongside a Candida regimen. You can do that, and I've done that clinically. So, but again, you would just want to either discuss that with a provider to make sure that would be appropriate for you.
And then how many capsules of Megaspore were taken in the study during the 30 days?
2 capsules.
Okay.
So that's what's great about all of our microbiome lab studies on Megaspore. They always test the actual label dose. So 2 caps daily is the therapeutic dose. So you know that you're taking the dose that was actually used in the study to get those outcomes.
For those of us who've had our gallbladder removed, should we do anything different as far as pre and probiotics?
So if you've had your gallbladder removed, your risk of SIBO does increase, typically about 2 years post removal of the gallbladder. So you would want to just be mindful of those types of things. And also we do know that there are shifts in the microbiome in those who have their gallbladder removed. So typically more negative dysbiotic shifts. So you could benefit from a spore. If you've had your gallbladder removed, you could benefit if your gut has started to shift in some of those more dysbiotic ways.
Okay. Let's see. Is it safe for MCAS? I'm extremely sensitive to most supplements.
MCAS, that is a whole nother animal. That's very individualized. We do have people, and I've had clients who have MCAS who have taken spores successfully. I can't say that's going to be the case for every single person with MCAS, but you'd want to go low and slow. The spores themselves are not histamine releasing, so they shouldn't aggravate a histamine response. MCAS isn't always just histamine. It can sometimes be other things as well. So I would say just start really low and slow. Maybe start with a quarter of a capsule instead of the 1 cap every other day. Start with maybe a quarter capsule, and then work with your provider on what's the most appropriate titration schedule for you.
So guys, everybody put your questions in the Q&A box for me. And so where you're typing right now is the chat box. So come over to the bottom of your Zoom where it says Q&A and type it in there. I just realized maybe some people don't know where that is. Okay, can this address H. pylori, SIBO, and fungal overgrowth without being on any other treatment? I'm going to say probably not, but
Yeah, no, I mean, if you have H.
Sorry.
pylori, you're gonna need, if you have H. pylori, you're gonna need some other interventions. SIBO, you're gonna need, multiple intervention. Now, spores can be an adjunct for sure with whatever intervention recommendations your provider is going to be giving you. But then them in and of themselves probably won't treat that whole condition. But they're a great complement.
SIBO SOS is SIBO SOS. It stands for Small Intestine Bacterial Overgrowth, Save Ourselves. So that's my platform. And it is, that's what we're talking about here. Do you need to take Spore probiotics every day, forever?
Mm-mm. That's what's great about them. You're changing the gut ecology. So we recommend that you take Megaspore for at least 3 months, 3 to 4 months daily at the 2 caps. And then if you've changed other dysbiotic risk factors, if you've changed your diet, if you've lowered glyphosate exposure, if you're working on your stress levels, reduced your alcohol consumption, eating a pretty whole foods diet, modified your exercise regimen, all those different exposome conditions that I was mentioning earlier, if you've worked on all that, then you can cut back on Megaspore to just maybe twice a week. You don't have to take it every day. Some people are able to get off of it. So it's not like other traditional probiotics that you have to keep taking every single day to maintain the benefits. You can actually cut back on it.
Can we split up the dose AM, PM, or should we take only once per day and when? We're going to cover that again.
You can take it however you want to, because if you remember back to the study I mentioned, those were college students. You can bet that they were very erratic in what they were doing. So if it's easier for you to remember and just take two at once, you can do that, or you can split it AM and PM.
These are not prokinetics, guys. These are probiotics, so that is different. Okay, let's see. I want you to, if you would please, Karen is asking again, can you go over the post-antibiotic protocol again? And just say it really slowly so everyone can kind of absorb it.
Yeah. So during the antibiotics, 2 capsules of Megaspore, 2 capsules of Restore Flora. That's the one that has the Saccharomyces in it as well. And then 2 capsules of HU58. So you do that during the course of the antibiotics. And then depending on how long of an antibiotic regimen you were on, so if it was a 7-day course, then you would continue that regimen for 21 days. So 3 times whatever the course of the antibiotics was. If it was a 10-day course, you would do that for 30 days. So you would just multiply however many number of days it was that you were on the antibiotic, and that's how many days after the antibiotic that you would continue that regimen.
Okay. Ronnie, I have a customer on daily probiotics doing well for constipation. Could I add Megaspore for a month and then decrease the probiotic, expecting the Megaspore to restore the gut integrity? Would including Mega Mucosa also be a good choice?
Sure. Yeah, you can do Megaspore along with other probiotics. It's not going to compete with them, so you're not going to be negating anything. So you could certainly do that to start to shift that gut ecology. And then for helping with that mucosal barrier and the leaky gut, you could bring in the Mega Mucosa.
Is MegaSporeBiotic a combo of a prebiotic and probiotic?
No, it is only spores. There's no prebiotic fibers in there.
Okay. If someone's feeling like it's a little too much, they get some bloating, they feel like they're having a die-off reaction, would it help to take a smaller dose?
Sure, you can open up the capsules. As I was mentioning earlier, you could start with a 1/2 cap or a 1/4 of a cap if you wanted to, and just start at a lower dose and do every other day or daily, and then work your way up.
I have somebody saying I have mold. Is this the same thing as mold? I hear the word spores and I want to run away.
Yeah, there are many. So when we talk about spore forming microbes, there are thousands of different types of spore forming microbes. Some are not good, some are great. Same thing with bacillus. You have a lot of different types of bacillus spores. You also have soil-based organisms. Megaspore is not soil-based, and it is not a mold spore former. If these are beneficial microbes that have co-evolved with humans, they are derived from a human GI system, so they are coming from human origin. So they are not the same thing. It's kind of like a sheepdog is going to have a very different role than a Chihuahua. So that's where we get down to that strain specificity of probiotics. You think of it the same way with, your dogs. So, Chihuahuas are going to function very differently from a greyhound or from a sheepdog. These spores are going to function very differently from other types of spore formers because of that strain specificity. So you don't have to worry about that if you're struggling with mold.
Okay, is it okay to take them if the post antibiotic if you have intolerances to salicylates and histamines?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, here we go. I'm trying to get in a bunch of this stuff as fast as possible. Yes, Marilyn. Hi, Marilyn. You can if you want to. Sorry, I just want to clarify. This won't help resolve leaky gut on its own, correct?
This on its own will resolve leaky gut?
If you want to address leaky gut, can I
Oh,
just do Megaspore?
you could try. I mean, again, it depends on the severity of your leaky gut, situation and other factors. In the LPS study, we did see that it did improve leaky gut by nature of reducing those LPSs. You may need to add something in addition to that to help specifically with the intestinal lining and with that mucus barrier, like a megamucosa or, other option. But if you wanted to start with Megaspore and just try that, you could.
Okay. Okay, we covered that. Another Alicia asked that question. What's the difference between Megaspore and Megagenesis?
So megagenesis is a lot is a it's an origin of, so basically it's a lactobacillus reuteri that is isolated from these indigenous groups in Papua New Guinea that essentially is a strain that we've lost. So it's a sort of lost strain, so to speak. And so it's packaged in this particular probiotic to help with microbial diversity. It also does help with the immune system. It has a very different mechanism of action from Megaspore. Megaspore is more about reconditioning the gut, whereas Megagenesis is more about helping with some of the immune components and a particular component called indoles, which play a role in insulin sensitivity and GLP-1. So we've used that in some people who have autoimmunity and obesity and some insulin challenges. It's going to be working very differently from how Megaspore works. And with Megagenesis, it does really well when you pair it with fibers. It tends to have a higher establishment rate and have more effectiveness with fiber.
Okay. Let's see. I take Megaspore twice a day for a while. Recently had some strange GI issues, including flu and food poisoning. Any protocol to get things back on track? So, okay, so that's not, you're not saying you did antibiotics. Any protocol for post-colonoscopy?
Post-colonoscopy, you can actually use a similar regimen as the antibiotic therapy, just to help to regain that balance of your microbiome.
Okay. Is MegaSporeBiotic safe for those with IBD?
Yes.
Okay. Cancel. Okay, great.
In fact, we have an IBD study that was done using both an animal model and also a shine model using human samples using Megaspore along with Megapre and Megamucosa, and then one that was just using Megaspore, and all showed beneficial changes.
Gustavo is talking about H. pylori. There's a formulation for H. pylori at Microbiome Labs. Can you touch on that, the name of it, etc.?
There is, yeah, there's a formulation called Pylogard. Pylogard is a different strain of L. reuteri. It's a very specific strain that binds H. pylori in the gut or in the stomach and helps to eliminate it. So it has a very different mechanism of action than doing a broad spectrum antibiotic treatment. Pylogard itself, the raw ingredient, has 13 studies, human trials done, 10 of those being in adults, two or three of them being in children. So it has very high specificity and affinity for H. pylori. So if you have H. pylori, we do recommend Pylogard. Not only does it help with binding and reducing the H. pylori, but it also does help with some of the symptoms, like bloating and discomfort. So that would be an option.
Okay. Yes, you can do butyrate supplements at the same time, right, Alicia? Yep. Where do you send the receipt to if you just ordered? I'm going to pop into the chat. It's info at SIBO SOS. That's it. Info at SIBOSOS.com. I gotta add that. Anthony, can you pop that in there, darling? Thank you. Okay. I appreciate that. Let's see. Can you take the Pylogard with the Spore probiotic?
Yes.
Yep. So it's called Pylogard, guys and gals. Cami, if you have H. pylori. Margot, new to this information, recommendations of who we can work with regarding stomach issues. Your gastroenterologist, a functional medical practitioner. You've got to really it depends on what your stomach issues are. I think that's too broad. Will Pylogard get rid of H. pylori?
We've had trials of showing it eradication. Yeah.
Okay. And Danny, Anthony, can you reach out to Dani, D-A-N-I, and give her or him the email address for support is it support at microbiomelabs.com? Okay.
Or support at, for the customer service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Constant diarrhea. What do you suggest for that? Always get tested for C. diff, by the way, and parasites. Thoughts on that, Alicia?
Actually here, I'm looking here at just the customers. So it's let me put this in the chat.
Okay, that helps. Thanks.
So
okay.
I'll put it here.
Okay. So when you go to the website, you are going to click the link and it's going to ask you for a patient direct code. And it's SIBO SOS. And there's no space, Anthony. I originally typed it with a space. There's no space. And then it's no bloat 15 is the 15% off discount. Okay. So we're going to keep posting that in there. I know, Danny, it says your email's incorrect. You got to talk to their customer service. Okay. How long does the Pylogard usually take to eradicate H. pylori?
If used as a monotherapy, you want to take it for 8 weeks.
Okay, great. Would it make sense to do a round of Pylogard after traveling to a third world country?
You could. The good thing about Pylogard is that it's not going to affect the commensals. So you're not going to be doing anything negative to your microbiome. In fact, there was a study that showed that it helped to improve the beneficial species and reduce some of the opportunistic ones. So there's no harm in doing it if you want to use it as a precaution.
Okay. Thoughts on microscopic colitis? Did you already answer that?
I did not.
Okay. Thoughts on that, please.
So microscopic colitis is a type of IBD. Requires a comprehensive approach. You'd want to be thinking about microbial diversity, gut ecology, building a resilient microbiome, reducing inflammation. Fish oils are great for that. Megamarine has SPMs. Our Megamarine has SPMs in them, which if you're not familiar with what SPMs are, they are these really targeted, highly anti-inflammatory components of fish oil that can help to resolve inflammation. So they work on that resolution of inflammation. So fish oil is great. Gut healing is important. Dietary management, that's a real comprehensive approach, but spores can certainly play a role in that.
Okay. Okay, we have 6 more minutes and I'm doing my best. Please do come to the Q&A box for your questions. SIBO SOS will often be automatically applied. If you do not see SIBO SOS in the patient direct box, then add SIBO SOS. And then no bloat 15 is the coupon code to get the 15% off. If you order between now and the next hour and 5 minutes, and you email us at info@sibosos.com, we will send you the link for the slides. If you don't make it within that window, that's cool. You can still get the 15% off discount. So, okay. There are 100 questions. God bless you. Okay. Let's see. Is there an argument for staging repopulation of the GI microbiome with products like Megaspore after a bad commensal killing regime? Or can repopulating the regimen begin right away with Megaspore probiotic? Megaspore. And I have a comment after you.
So is that saying, can you use spores alongside a kill phase versus after?
Yeah, I think so. Phase? Yeah.
Okay. You can do it both ways. You can either do it concurrently or after. It would just depend on the situation. I generally do it concurrently just to help with that preservation, because some of the spores are going to have that competitive advantage, as we saw with secreting certain antimicrobials. So it can sometimes facilitate that process. But if it's, depending on how many things you're taking during that kill phase, you can do it kind of as a post cleanup with other gut support and gut healing supplements. It would just kind of depend on the situation. So you can do it either way.
Saccharomyces boulardii for Candida dysbiosis and take with the spore probiotics for best results, question mark. So basically, if you have Candida overgrowth, can you do the Saccharomyces boulardii safely? Because it is a yeast base.
Yes,
Explain that.
you can. Yeah. Saccharomyces boulardii actually can help with competitive exclusion of things like Candida.
Okay. Do you ever work with anything with EMF sensitivity and mold with probiotics at Megaspore at Microbiome?
So it's funny. I wonder so I know that there was some chatter recently about a probiotic that's being studied for EMFs.
Yeah.
I haven't looked into that specifically, but I know that that question has come up.
Yeah.
So I think it's a newer research opportunity. So we haven't at Microbiome Labs, we haven't explored that avenue. In terms of mold, definitely the spores can. In fact, HU58, there's a someone up in the Northeast doing some research on the HU58 specifically and certain mycotoxins that are coming through our food sourcing and seeing some good results with that. So yeah, you could use spores in with those certain conditions.
Okay, can you explain Megapre and Megamucosa to use alongside Megaspore?
Yes. So Megaspore, so those three products, Megaspore, Megapre, Megamucosa, they make up what we call our total gut restoration protocol, which does come as a kit. So you can actually purchase those as a kit through MBL if you so choose, or you can purchase them individually. So Megapre is what we call a precision prebiotic. So it's a blend of three particular prebiotics. So xylo-oligosaccharides, galacto-oligosaccharides, and fructo-oligosaccharides, or FOS, ZOS, and GOS, if for shorthand. And they specifically target and feed those commensals and those keystones. So what we have seen in studies where we've combined a Megaspore with Megapre, there's actually a, instead of just like a 24% increase in 24 to 50% increase in short chain fatty acids, there's actually about 140% increase in short chain fatty acids, combining the Megaspore with the Megapre. So you're really selectively feeding those beneficial commensals. So yep, there it is. There's total gut restoration. So that's Megapre. It does come in either powder or capsule form. There you go. I do recommend if you are a more highly sensitive individual, I do recommend the capsules generally, just because sometimes people, if you're more sensitive, could react to maybe the flavors and the sweeteners that are in the powder form. So you could do the capsule. You can also titrate the capsule a lot more slowly by opening it up and putting it like in water if you're having some bloating, because the prebiotic, since it is a prebiotic, you sometimes want to go much more slowly in your titration up on that. And then Megamucosa is our rebuild, or basically helps with that mucosal membrane support. So helping to build up that mucus layer. It's a blend of 4 different amino acids plus some citrus bioflavonoids and immunoglobulins. So it's really specifically targeted to help with binding those LPSs and helping with reducing that inflammation. And so that they're done in phases. So you start with Megaspore, do that for a month, then you bring in and layer in Megapre, do that for the second month, and then the third month you layer in the Megamucosa. And so you do all 3 products for that third month. Some people carry it over into a 4th month. And essentially you're working on both the dysbiosis, the short chain fatty acids, the mucus layer, short chain fatty acid production, keystones. You're working on all those different components that make up a healthy gut and a resilient gut. So TGR is the name of that particular program.
There it is, total gut restoration. Okay. Martha's saying my grandkids take the Megaspore gummies, helps with constipation. I do love a good gummy, I have to say.
I have to say I am a fan of the gummies.
Yeah. Let's see, autism. And hi. Is there a benefit with the spores for autism? SCD diet, specific carbohydrate diet, does not recommend bifido in the early stages if yogurt making.
Yeah. Yes. We've had lots of great anecdotal success with the spores. In autism, we have lots of practitioners who've used it. autism, as we know, is very much rooted in gut dysbiosis and LPS and leaky gut and all these other microbiome alterations. And so you can use the spores in those cases. And we have a lot of practitioners who have done that and done it successfully.
Okay. Listen, we have to boogie. Thank you all so much. Let's put some more love into the chat for Alicia. I'm going to go over it one more time. Go look in the chat. That's the link if you want to order with the 15% off. Use patient code direct SIBO SOS. That's lots of S's, no C's. And no bloat 15 is the way to get the 15% off. If you would like the slides, you have an hour to peruse the site, see if you want to get more than one thing, check out the the pylori guard and all of that. And then today, don't do it in 3 weeks. My team has moved on and customer service has to go back in time and it's painful, to info@sibosos.com if you want the slides based on your proof of purchase between like 3 p.m. today and 5 p.m. Eastern time. If you purchase something from Microbiome Labs, we will send you the link to this beautiful slides that Alicia created. So there's a lot of hope here. I just want to really like kind of end on that and just say there's a ton of hope. There's a ton of support. Your microbiome is the link to mental health, to weight balance, to, yes, motility, slow and fast, your immune system. The more and more we read about it and learn about it, the more exciting it is that the science is trying to catch up with Mother Nature. And at Microbiome Labs, they're doing a great job. Megaspore is one of the most popular probiotics in North America, at the very least, if not the world. And it's very exciting to be able to have access to your educational resources, Alicia, and also the special discount that they have provided for us. So thank you very, very much, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate it. And thank you for that great presentation. And thanks to Anthony. Hopefully we didn't beat you up too much, Anthony, on your first time out. And we will see everyone next time. Okay. Mwah. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Betsy and Lori and Susan and Darlene and Evelyn and Margot and Inez and Karen and Judy and Tracy and Brett and Marion and all that jazz. Hilda, Dee, Mike, Lori, Harry, Martha, Catherine. Oh my gosh, more Marys, more Karens, more Carries. It's good to have you all here. Marilyn, good to see you again, and on and on and on. I'm just going to say one other thing about the Trulance. Someone was asking about Trulance and Linzess. Those are for constipation, and they both work on different receptors. And did you want to mention anything about that? I just have a lot of experience with people in the SIBO land talking about those two medications. They can be super helpful, but they also can be super acute, I'll say.
Yeah, my experience with those is that they sometimes work for a period of time and then they stop working, or they swing someone too far one way or the other. So not to say that they aren't helpful, they certainly can be, and they can be very beneficial for some people. But there's other options that you can bring in to kind of support that gut motility, and again, working on reconditioning the gut can be part of that process.
So there you go. Okay, with that, we'll talk to you later. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. You will get a replay tonight, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks.